In this update, we're going to be breaking down the weather setups over the next 7 days, but in the short term, I'm concerned about damaging winds, large to very large hail, and tornadoes, and especially flooding rains. So let's start off with the overall radar this morning. You can follow along with the date up above my head on the top right-hand corner of the screen. And here are the areas of instability this morning. You've got a warm front that's draped across portions of Nebraska. That sneaks in just south of the Minneapolis area, as well as a low pressure center draped across portions of Colorado. That's the same mechanism that dumped all the large hail yesterday and those tornado warnings just east of the Denver Metroplex. But the areas of instability today are further south into portions of the Oklahoma area where we do have activity this morning. I think this activity really increases as we get deeper into the afternoon with a very intense dry line setup. We also have another pocket of energy that's in and around the Shreveport area this morning. That's the same energy that dumped almost 10 inches of rain around the Houston area yesterday in some isolated areas. This is a very slow moving system because it's got very light steering currents aloft, and it's going to be drifting. Drifting further north and northeast as we get deeper into the next couple of days. So let's talk about the overall setups going forward, and here's the setup for the dry line. So here's the time and date up above my head around 4 o'clock this afternoon. We are going to have an active dry line. There's your low pressure center right here, and you can see the sharp gradient between the very dry air and the very moist and sticky air mass. And I think that's the mechanism where the atmosphere is really going to start to overturn later on this afternoon. So they do in fact have a slight and upgraded to enhanced risk for all three modes of severe storms. So if you live anywhere around the Rapid City area, into the Sioux Falls area, back into the North Platte area, even into Goodland, Kansas, up here into Wichita, Kansas, as well as down here into the Oklahoma City area, you need to be on high alert for all three modes of severe storms, and especially large to, if not very large hail. So everywhere in these red shaded areas, you have a greater probability of seeing those larger hailstones, but even a greater probability further south into Dodge City, into Wichita, back into the Oklahoma City area. Those could be the biggest hailstones of maybe some very large hail, and some of those could be in the golf ball, even upwards to possibly tennis ball size hail. So definitely be on high alert. And we looking at tornadoes as well. So this whole axis is going to be, inundated with strong storms, especially after 4 o'clock. I'm thinking about between 4 and 11 o'clock this evening. Those are that main time frame that you need to be on high alert, but especially into the 4, probably 7, 8, 9 o'clock time frame for tornadic activity down here into the Dodge City area, back into the Oklahoma City area, into the Wichita region. So here's what the radar could look like about 4 o'clock this afternoon. So here's your low pressure center locked over portions of Colorado, and you've got this kind of shrimp-like hook that's associated with it, with this activity that's going to be branching just to the right of this low pressure center. And that's the activity that I'm most concerned about. And this will be fishtailing further south. So I do feel once we get beyond the 4 o'clock time frame down here into portions of Oklahoma, this whole area is going to be lighting up in a big way. So yes, between 4 and about 11 o'clock in these regions, in the risk zones, you need to be on high alert and stay weather aware and have your safety plan in place. So I am excited to share that I've actually teamed up with Papa Rob's Coffee and created my own breakfast blend. And yes, 12 different varieties to choose from as well, from all over the globe. It is made fresh daily. Some of the areas that it includes is like Vietnam, back into Honduras, Guatemala, Indonesia, Colombia, even Costa Rica. And he does have a decaf, but the Pow Time is called Pow Time. It's a breakfast blend. It actually comes in a smooth and a bold roast. So this is really good coffee, folks. If you'd like to try some for yourself, all you have to do is go to paparobscoffee.com, and I do have a discount code of PAL15, and I'll have that in the description below, so you can easily click on it for yourself. Use the code PAL15 to save 15% off and possibly order some for yourself. So let's take a look at the setup for tomorrow. So here's the setup for tomorrow, because we're still having severe storms. So that low pressure center shifts a little bit further off into the east. Now it's highlighted over portions of the Nebraska region. So we're concerned about just to the right of severe storms. But even further south, we're going to have another mechanism that comes out of Mexico. That's going to be creating a southern branch of instability for more storms as well, and then plus increase the rainfall and the flooding rains further south. So here's the vorticities that we're concerned about. You've got one highlighted right over portions of Nebraska, and just to the right of there, those where the severe storms are going to be breaking out. And then we have another pocket of energy that's going to be coming out of Mexico, and that's going to be slow moving mechanism in itself and dump an extreme amount of rain, especially into portions of South Texas over the next couple of days. So here's the setups going forward. So Friday, you've got the northern side, again, where the low pressure is just to the right of there. We've got some instability. We're going to be overturning the atmosphere in the heat of the afternoon into portions of eastern Nebraska, back into Iowa, getting into northern portions of Missouri. And then we have the southern branch with the vorticity that's coming out of Mexico. That's going to be inundated with some higher wind gusts and some larger hail down here into South Texas. That could bleed into portions of central and northern Texas as we get into your Friday afternoon time frame. But I'm really concerned about the flooding rain. So you've got the northern side that's going to have the instability access as well, and that creates the instability in portions of the Dakotas regions. But further south, with that area of low pressure going to be developing down here in Mexico, as well as the intense some of that large hail and damaging winds, we're going to be looking at flooding rain. So yes, that is a moderate risk for excessive flooding down here into the portions of the San Antonio region, back into Del Rio, into portions of central Texas. Definitely be on high alert. We could be looking at rainfall rates 1.5 to 2 inches per hour down there in that region. And this is the breakdown on some of these rainfall totals just over the next 2 days, folks. This is between now and Saturday morning time frame. So you have the northern side with the instability, these spokes of energy breaking out with heavier rains across portions of Nebraska, back into the Dakotas, into North Dakota. Then we have that MCV, right? That's just kind of sits and sits. Again, the light steering currents aloft. It really doesn't go anywhere. It can dump a very heavy rain and could be stalling down here in these regions. So some of these areas could pick up some significant totals just in the next 48 hours. And then you have the southern branch that's going to be coming out of Mexico that's going to be lifting further inland into Texas, dumping very heavy rain, multi-inch totals starting into Friday into going into Saturday morning. I think it just only increases as we get deeper into the day on Saturday. So here's the setup for Saturday time frame. So we're going to be starting to get the ridge starting to build over the top. That just creates those just very light steering currents aloft. And we at the same time, we've got that low pressure center that's going to be moving in from Mexico, and it's just not going to be able to move there anytime in a short amount of fashion. So it's just going to dump an extreme amount of rainfall back down there into South Texas. You've got back-to-back days of moderate risk for excessive flooding. And these areas in a serious drought, they need the rainfall in a big way, but the ground is super dry, and it's going to be very difficult with these rainfall rates of 1.5 to 2 inches per hour to soak in. It's not going to have much time. So I'm definitely concerned about flooding down here into South Texas and heavier rains. Just Texas just gets inundated with heavier rains, and it's going to be a nasty day going into the portions of the day on your Saturday time frame. But there's the severe weather setup. So you got the northern side with the boundary with the warm front that's going to be draped across portions of Iowa going into Saturday afternoon, and then you have the southern branch all the way down into the Rio Grande Valley. Those could be some stronger winds associated with those into the heat of the afternoon. And it really doesn't go anywhere on Sunday, right? You got the very light steering currents aloft. You got the jet stream well to the north. It just doesn't have much steering currents, you've got, just it's just kind of meanders and just kind of sits and spins and just dumps heavy rainfall. So this is going to be a compounding effect over the next couple of days. And by the time we get into your Sunday time frame, we're probably going to have numerous flood watches in place in these regions. And some of these areas could pick up actually some double-digit totals in some isolated areas further south into, say, San Antonio, into the Del Rio region, down here portions of towards the Rio Grande Valley region. So as we get into Sunday, here's the overall setup. We're going to start to see the beginning stages of a ridge really starting to build and deepen over the Pacific Northwest and Canada. At the same time, it starts heating up a little bit in portions of the Northeast as well as into the Southeast. But that's just going to put like a squeeze play with this pocket of energy with this low pressure center locked over Mexico. That's going to put the cooler than average air and just create all the instability, and with the blocking over the top and create that blocking mechanism. Because going into Monday, again, the steering currents really doesn't go anywhere. So you got the ridge really start to amplify and really start building over the top. That just puts these, again, light steering currents back into Texas. It might slowly shift into portions of New Mexico by then. But here's the setup for Monday. Again, you got the ridge further to the north. Where you've got the ridges, it's pretty high and dry. There's not much happening into the Pacific Northwest on the precipitation front. Just a lot of heat going to be building over the next couple of days, and especially in later this weekend into early next week. And that puts all these areas just kind of high and dry, and that puts all the instability further south as well. So it's still, even by Monday, not as heavy, but it's still raining across portions of the southern plains. And even into Tuesday, it really doesn't go anywhere anytime soon. So this is going to be a compounding effect over the next couple of days. I think by the time we get into the weekend, deeper in the weekend, especially into early next week, with that ridge really building over the top, that pretty much puts a squash play on any severe weather setup. So we don't have to be really concerned about that. It's just the very heavy rain that we're still going to be concerned about into portions of Texas. Again, that's going to bleed over into portions of New Mexico, and these areas desperately need the rain. So it's not the worst thing in the world. It just comes in too fast, too furious, and definitely flooding is going to be a huge concern. So here's the setup going into Wednesday for next week. So we do have a little bit of a cold front, a little bit of a cooler air going to be filtering in across portions of the Northeast. It really doesn't have that much instability with it or rain showers with it. It's just going to be a boundary with much drier air going to be filtering in on the backside. And you can see this on the setup with the brown shaded regions of that just drier air filtering in on the backside. But again, it just kind of puts that squeeze play with the ridge over the Pacific Northwest. That puts this low pressure center kind of locked over the desert Southwest. So that puts this whole area under cooler than average conditions and just wetter than average conditions, with high and dry setups over a good part of the Northwest and a good part of the Ohio Valley into the Northeast. And it's not really until Friday going into next week. So we still got the ridge, building over the Pacific Northwest. That stays pretty prominent, at least over the next week and a half. But we do have a little bit of a trough coming in for the Northeast. So that's going to bring a little bit more unsettled weather coming back for them. And this is going to be able to finally kind of put the end to the precipitation further south into the good part of the southern plains and a good part of the Southwest regions, with that trough lifting back and pushing back further into the Baja, back into the Pacific, and more of the ridge starting to build back in for portions of the Southwest. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video. Definitely be on high alert for those severe storms later on this afternoon. And then again, over the next couple of days, especially Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, definitely be on high alert down there in the South for very heavy rain and flash flooding setup. So do not drive across a road that you cannot see the bottom. So I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video. Definitely hit the subscribe button and catch me next update while I protect you before and after storm.